Hi, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm an occasional blogger, haven't been really active lately, but I thought it might be cool to share a reading list, what I've been reading in the past week, and some thoughts on the articles. And to get that done on iOS as easy as possible, I thought it would be cool to use shortcuts, and I would like to store the information to Airtable. And how is that done actually? That's what I would like to share today. And to start with, let's head over to the Airtable. So I have a really simple table on the Airtable service, and which have basically three fields. The first one is called URL, and the type of the field is URL. Could be text also. Then I have a field called notes, which is long text. And I have a field called posted, which is a checkbox, so basically a Boolean value. And this is where I would like to hold the data to be used later for the actual publishing automation. And to be able to interact with Airtable from shortcuts, the Airtable API is the easiest way, I believe. And to get started with the Airtable API, you can click the question mark here and click the API documentation. The API documentation is specific to the table we just created, so it's really easy to follow. On the left we have the table itself, and then there are a couple of methods we can use for the table. And the one we are looking here is create records. And in curl syntax, here's the API call we must do in order to store new record. And things to pay attention here is the URL and a couple of headers, authorization, which holds an API key. More on that a bit later. And we must set content type to application JSON. And we must post a records array, which holds objects called fields. And there are values for the individual kind of columns on the table: URL, notes, and posted. In order to make an API call from shortcuts, we need to store this information somewhere in order to use it later. And I like to use a tool called Toolbox Pro to store information, which is kind of stored once and used many times in various shortcuts. So for example, if I change my Airtable API key, I only need to change it to one place and it gets updated everywhere. So let's copy the URL like so and store it as a new key, as a new global variable to the Toolbox Pro app. Let's press the plus sign here and give it a name, and let's say Airtable blog URL, and let's paste the value here. Is there an extra blank? Yes, there was. And save the edits. And you can get the Airtable API key from the account settings. I'm not going to show that to you today because you should keep that private. Okay, so now we have stored the URL and API key to Toolbox Pro. So let's start building the actual shortcut. Let's head to the Shortcuts app and create a new shortcut. And I want to use this from Safari. So basically, when I'm reading an article on Safari, I want to be able to store the new link and the comments straight from Safari without going to any other app. And for that, we are going to set a couple of parameters. Let's say this is called store block article, or link better yet. And let's give it some nice icon. Let's put a gear icon and change the color to green maybe. And the important part here is to select the share sheet. This is what we are going to be using. The widget is not important here, and share sheet types. This is another important part. Let's deselect all and scroll all the way until we find URLs and select that. Okay, so now we have the basic setup done. And when we set that this is used from a share sheet, Shortcuts added the accepts and URLs on the top of the shortcuts. Okay, so what do we need to do? We will get the actual URL through this as an input to this shortcut. So we must still ask the nodes from user, and for that we can select, it's called ask for input. So we track that and we ask a question. Let's say comments, and we change the type to text, which is already selected. So now we have the URL and we have the comments. Now we have to somehow format the data so we can post it to the Airtable API. And for that, we are going to be using a dictionary. And that's right there. Okay, so the Airtable API gives us an object called fields, which holds the individual values, URL nodes, and posted. And since the default value, if we do not post the posted value, it gets set to false, which is what we want in this case. So we only need to post URL and nodes. And in order to do that from shortcuts, we are going to set a new item to dictionary, and we are going to call this fields, and we are going to insert a text value, which is going to be called URL, and the value is going to be set to the shortcut input. And then we add another text field, which is called nodes, and for that we will select a magic variable and select the provided input. And let's get back there. Provided input, and we can rename this variable to say comments, so it's easier to remember later on what we set there. Okay, so how do we get the values for the API key and API URL from Toolbox Pro? We are going to be using Toolbox Pro app from the shortcuts, and there's an action called global variables. Let's select that and change the method to get. And after we click that, we get a list of all the variables we have set. So now I want to be using the API key, and then we need the URL. So we are going to be selecting the same action again, and again get, and the value for a Airtable block URL. Cool. What else? Now we have the data we are going to be posting. We have the API key, we have the API URL. And in order to interact with APIs from shortcuts, we are going to be using get contents of URL action. And we are going to change quite many things in this one. Okay, first off, we need to set the URL. So we clear this and change the value to the, just a sec, let's select the magic variable and select the Airtable block URL. And let's once again rename this value. Let's say URL, or better yet, Airtable URL, and done. And then we are gonna do a post request and set the couple of headers which we were presented here earlier. So we need to set content type to application JSON and authorization to our API key. So let's select this header and let's scroll here and set new header authorization, and I set the bearer keyword already on the variable. So here we can use again magic variable and select the API key, and we can once again rename that. We can say Airtable API key, and then we needed the content type to be application JSON. Let's select that so there are no typos, like so, and application JSON. There we go. And then as the post request body, we are going to select unintuitively file and then choose a variable and select magic variable, and we are going to select the dictionary we created earlier, like so. And there we go. Now we have all set for the posting of the data. But I think it's good to check the result of the post so we know if something went wrong. So we are gonna once again select an action, and we are gonna select an action get dictionary from input, and the contents of the URL is exactly what we want. And then we are gonna select get dictionary value, and we are gonna get an, I know that if there are some issues with the post message to Airtable, it will return a key called error. So we are gonna check, I can't type, if there is an error. No, sorry, we are gonna get the value of the error object or key in the dictionary we got from Airtable. And let's check if it got a value or not. So if dictionary value does not have any value, so it doesn't exist, in other words, we know that everything went okay. So we can select an action called alert, show alert, there we go, and show an alert to user that everything went okay. Successfully stored a new link. And there's one S missing. Oh. There we go. And we don't need the cancel button. And in case there was an error, I want to see what went wrong. And in that case, I'm gonna hit enter and select the dictionary value, which is the contents of the error value. So we can show that to the user that something went wrong. And there we go. Now we should have a functioning shortcut. Let's recap. We got the URL from as an input parameter. We ask the comments from user. We create the dictionary which holds the necessary information. Then we fetch the API key and URL from Toolbox Pro. And then we make the network request, a post request to the Airtable API, and set the authorization header, set the application content type header to application JSON, and we post the dictionary contents as the request body. And then we get the response and see if it contains an error value. If it doesn't, we show a success message, and if it does, we show an error message. And that should be it. Let's test this out. Let's hit done here. And then the name is store block link. Oh, that is a typo, of course. Let's fix that. There we go. And hit done. And now when I'm in Safari, let's say I'm reading my own blog, I'm gonna hit the share button and I'm gonna scroll all the way down, and there it is, store block link. Let's hit that one, and then it kicks off the shortcut, and now it asks the comments. Read my blog. Okay, and then and in iOS 13, the Shortcuts app requests permission to access each URL individually. So this is the confirmation. Yes, we do want to allow. And let's see what happens. Success. And now if we go to the Airtable, we should see a new link here if all went well. Trying to reconnect. And there we go. There are a couple of old lines in there. But we got our link here and our comments, which can later be used for something a bit more cool, maybe. Okay, so there we go. Now we are able to store links and comments to the Airtable through Shortcuts on iOS 13. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video. Bye.